Hi, this is Mark with ValueCharts.com. Sometimes when I see certain patterns forming or certain show me studies, we call these value flags as well, form where you can combine several methodologies or indicators to try to identify strategic entry or exit points. I want to try to bring that to your attention. And one that's been really interesting lately in the Australian dollar is combining a longer term momentum, which I used to help me determine trend a little bit, and that's using the MQ momentum indicator with very long settings. In this case, I'm using 150 for my double smoothing settings, and then my 8 for the third parameter there, which is the difference between the indicator line and the signal line, and that's what forms the histogram here. But using that as my filter up here, and then I'm also identifying extreme, either moderately undervalued or significantly undervalued points opposite the direction of the trend. So in this case down here, we see that we have an uptrend here, up momentum here. We're using, again, this as a kind of a trending filter where the signal line is higher, indicator line is higher than the signal line. Indicator line is in blue, the signal line is dashed. And then we're flagging anything that's moderately undervalued. This is a 60-minute price chart, again, in the Australian dollar futures contract. And you can see here that those have been very strategic 60-minute entry points here with very low risk. But the one I really wanted to talk about, which is interesting, is using these same settings to identify significantly overvalued points on the upside. So we're getting red readings down here with the histogram bars, which are telling us that this market is turning over and heading south, potentially with our trending filter, and then the value flag up here at the top is directly above you can see the bar segment for the value bars here, where it's a red tip at the very top there. That signifies significantly overvalued, typically less than 2% of price action is above that. So it's reached a very overvalued state. If you go back and look in time here, that a lot of times when that happens, these are outstanding trade entry points. So if you can go back again, we see a couple more of these here. The red histogram bars are down, telling us we're in a downtrending state. And then we can see some fairly good, fairly strong selling points. Now, this point right here was not the ultimate top, but you don't have to risk a lot with this. You could conceivably risk the high of the bar. And notice that a lot of times what happens is when you reach the significantly overvalued state, I'm using, again, for my settings here, for for the value flags indicator, I'm using a 5-bar analysis period and a 0.2 scaling multiplier. This ends up being a very powerful and effective way to enter the market. The market ends up usually closing below that. So if you actually short the Australian dollar using these parameters, you don't have to risk really, but the entry level, which is right around the call it in this case 103.87, and the ultimate high of that price bar is at 103.89. So it's 2 ticks there. So it's 2 or 3 ticks, or just a couple ticks here typically that you have to risk. And then if the trade goes in your direction, then you can look at a value range trade to get out when the market reaches moderately undervalued in this case. But these end up being very low risk trades compared to the return that they generate. I try to point these out when I find them. We have a lot of different patterns we follow. This is a very powerful one that seems to be clicking recently with the Australian dollar. And then if you look at the last one that just generated here, it's absolutely beautiful. You're talking about literally at 104.90. The high of the price bar was at 104.91. So literally a tick of risk or so to the upside, and then all downside from there. I love using value charts and value bars because when you use it correctly and combine it with other types of trading methodologies, then it's possible to potentially identify some very strategic entry points where it's possible to dramatically reduce risk when trading the markets. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Make sure you keep on watching our videos in the future as we really try to point out some very powerful trading approaches using objective valuation. Thanks for watching.